Okay, we covered the basic problem of 2nd John. He's talking about the Gnostics who are teaching that you don't have to follow the entire Torah, that some of the commands have been done away with. Let's go into some technical issues here. First of all, this says at the beginning, to the elect lady and her children, whom I love in truth, and not only I, but also all those who have known the truth, because of the truth which abides in us and will be with us forever. Now, when he says that this is that these people are known by all of the followers of Yeshua, what he's saying there is that this is referring to a congregation. This is not talking about a lady who has a family. Okay, this is talking about an apostle who has a congregation. Now, I was reading in Andrew Roth's Aramaic English New Testament on 2nd John, and there is a very interesting note, and he translates it the elder to Curia, the elect, and to her children. And here's his note. Curia means lady, appears to be treated as a title in the Peshitta text. However, Aramaic also has the same word, Kof Resh Yud Aleph, Karya, that means called, as a participle adjective. In other words, what he's saying is that this word can be translated lady, as a title of a lady, or it can be translated called. Now, let's think about that. I think Andrew is assuming that the original text was in the Aramaic rather than the Hebrew. And he goes into this thing about it's a play on words, right? Well, if it was originally written in the Aramaic, then a play on words is very possible, right? However, if it was originally written in Hebrew, then what's more likely that is happening is that they're using this word to translate a Hebrew word, and it is being mistranslated from that into English. In other words, in Hebrew, it probably said called, which is translated kuria, which has two different meanings, and they went with the meaning of lady when they translated it into English, okay, as opposed to translating it as called. But let's think about this. It says, because then it says, and her children, right? Well, first of all, it's in the feminine, okay? So that threw the translators off. So it must mean lady if this other thing about her children is in the feminine, right? And it's her sons. Now this word children is really sons, and that's a technical term in the Hebrew for disciples. So we know that this is talking about someone who is an apostle. The question is this a man or a woman? Well, it very well could be a woman. We know that there were women who were apostles from other places in the New Testament. And we know that women have held all kinds of positions in the Scripture, including judge and general, as we see in the book of Judges with Ruth. Uh, so, um, okay. Yeah, I mean, Deborah, not Ruth. But so we know that it very well could be a woman who is an apostle. But there is another meaning here that is very interesting. John is talking to an apostle who is below him. In other words, he is a supervising grandfather apostle, and this is an apostle that he possibly trained. And so he has a relationship to this apostle that is different than the normal apostle relationship. An apostle, uh, remember, has sons. Why are they sons? Because they're going to be apostles, and apostles go out and they train other people to change, right? So, but in the Hebrew, the idea of male and female is also speaking about this idea of the one who is the rule, the one who is giving the things that we're supposed to be doing, and the female is the one who is receiving it. The female is the students, okay? So here, the apostle is the student of John. And therefore, this apostle can be talked about in terms of the feminine. So when it says the called one, the called one that is elect, and to her children, he could be referring to a male apostle who is his student, who he is saying, you need to receive some instruction from the man, the over apostle. Okay. Now, and as you can see, as you go through 2 John, he's not using his human authority, but he is explaining things from the Scripture. And so he's using the Scripture as his authority. But because he is the one who is providing the information to the student, he is the male and she is the female, or he, in this particular case. We've talked about the idea that we are all brothers, even the women. On the other hand, we are all daughters of Zion. Why? Because we receive from God. Okay? So then when it says lady later on, my dear lady, it's the same word, my dear called one, okay, in the feminine. And then in verse 13, we have a very interesting thing. It says, the children of your elect sister send you peace. So here he's using sister in the sense of a student of John, meaning that it could refer to a woman apostle or a man apostle who is a student of John. Okay, just some interesting thoughts on that from the original languages. The other one that I wanted to talk about was this term Antichrist. I talked about it a little bit before. It was it's a Greek word, okay, Antichrist. And you see in the Aramaic, you will see the Greek word Antichrist. It could have been translated into Aramaic, as false Messiah, okay? But it was not. It's using the Greek term Antichrist, okay? Now, if this is translated from the Hebrew, which I believe it was, then that is telling me that probably in the Hebrew, it is using this Greek term, antichrist, okay, or antichristos is how it is in the Greek. And so the question is, why does he suddenly throw in a Greek word in a Hebrew text? And it's very interesting. If you're familiar with the story of Hanukkah, the Maccabees, the whole issue there is Greek culture versus Hebrew culture. And I believe that that's what's going on here, that the Gnostics were trying to mix Yeshua with their Greek culture. And so what he's saying is that one of the ways that you identify this Antichristos is by the fact that he pushes Greek culture. If you see a church that is celebrating Christmas and Easter, which come from the gods of Gnosticism, the sun god and the Baal gods, Ishtar and so forth, these are Greek god system holidays. So if you have a church that is doing these holidays as opposed to doing the biblical holidays, what does that tell you? That tells you that they're pushing Greek culture. And so what are we doing? We are identifying them as Antichristos, Antichrist, because they are pushing a religion instead of the religion of the Bible, a different religion, a religion that is against the religion of the Bible. How is it against it? Well, it's saying that you're not supposed to follow the Torah. And as a result, it is causing people to not go to heaven, but rather to go to hell, because they are not living righteously, because they're following Greek culture. Okay, so just a couple of little interesting things from the original languages that were in 2 John. But the big picture for 2 John is that the problem with the Gnostics is that they are saying that you do not have to do a portion of the law of Moses, and he is very specifically in 2 John pointing out that these are deceivers, meaning the Gnostics of that day. It's very specific that we're talking about Gnosticism in this passage. And it's very specific in saying that the problem with the Gnostics is not the Trinity. The problem with the Gnostics is the fact that they are teaching against the Torah. There's another issue here. Why is it that not coming in the flesh is a problem? Well, if you're a Gnostic, then you believe that the spirit is good and the physical is bad. And if Messiah is good, then he cannot be physical. Therefore, he has to be spiritual. Now, this is different within Christianity. Christianity teaches that he physically came in the flesh. And so there is a difference there. But why is this a problem? This is not mentioned in Romans. Romans doesn't say that one of the steps is that you have to believe that Jesus came in the flesh. What Romans does say is that you have to follow the path of Yeshua. And if you can say that Yeshua did not come in the flesh, then you can also say that all of the other things that he said are possibly not true. Meaning that the path that he taught is not true. So we can throw out the path. And the path is in Romans. So this issue of not coming in the flesh becomes a gospel issue because it is directly saying not to follow the path that Yeshua taught. Okay, so and why do you need the path? Well, you don't need the path if you don't have to live righteously, if that's impossible, and if you don't have to do the whole Torah, then you don't need the path, right? So but they use this idea of not coming in the flesh in order to discount the teachings of Messiah. Okay, and then they use this term doctrine of Christ to refer to the Trinity rather than to the things that he actually taught. So there's several things in here that follow along into Christian theology: not doing the whole Torah, not having to live righteously, not having to follow the path, and all of these things are taught specifically by Gnostics according to this passage.